Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Profit Minds podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch, creator of the Profit Minds Growth System, a unique blend of profit growth, productivity acceleration, and building robust business process for scale. In every episode, I interview entrepreneurs and small business owners from around the world with a unique story to tell. You can find the show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and more. So, hi everyone. Today my guest is Yvonne McCool of COBRA Allies. And today we'll be talking about COBRA administration. Welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So this is the way I start every episode. It's tell me your story, because I find the stories are so fascinating. How did you get to where you are and decide to work with COBRA, which I'm not sure everybody understands anyway, and we'll get to that.
Right.
But tell us your story.
Yes. Well, so back in my early years, I started as a file clerk for a third-party administrator that did COBRA administration, flexible spending accounts, and payroll, and started as a file clerk. I was going to school at the time to get my mechanical engineering degree. And so pretty much fast forward, I did get my mechanical engineering degree. And but I love the industry so much and had a lot of great relationships that I chose to stay in the field and stay in COBRA administration specifically.
So what is COBRA?
COBRA is a law, and a COBRA is actually an acronym for Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. So that is, It's an act that requires employers nationwide with 20 or more employees to allow those that lose coverage, so an employee or maybe a spouse or dependent, due to a qualifying event, they have to allow them to continue that coverage, that health insurance. So that could be health insurance, that could be dental insurance, it could be vision. Another thing is telemedicine. So, because that's providing a medical service.
Yeah. So every employer that has more than 20 employees nationwide.
Nationwide.
Okay.
Nationwide.
If you offer a benefit like this, then you have to have a COBRA plan as well. So
yes.
So how does that work? How do you help these employers?
So really it starts when an employee is hired and enrolls in benefits. There's a notice that's required called an initial notice. And that initial notice needs to be sent to the employee and spouse. And they can have it in one letter as long as they're at the same address. And what that letter does is that tells them the rights and responsibilities under COBRA, because there's going to be certain events that the employer is not going to know about, and they need to know about it because they may. So for instance, if a loss of dependent status, they might not necessarily know that, and they'll need to offer them COBRA. So that's what that initial notice does, is it tells them their rights and their responsibilities under COBRA. Again, because the employer is not going to know everything. And then the next thing that would happen would be a qualifying event. So that notice is going to go out to those that are losing coverage due to a qualifying event. So it may be the employee's terminated, the employee has a reduction of work hours, so now they're no longer eligible for benefits, maybe divorce, legal separation, Medicare entitlement. So there are a few qualifying events that happen for that notice to go out.
Yeah, it sounds like it's pretty complicated. How do you keep track of all of that stuff?
Yeah, so it is complicated, and over the years I've seen it change. The language is required to change. So, for instance, when the whole marketplace came into play, now that's required to be in the qualifying event letter. So, as an alternative to continuing their health insurance that they have under their employer, it goes over, that they could go to the marketplace and they may be able to find, better coverage or maybe less expensive coverage. And sometimes in some cases, it can be subsidized on the marketplace.
Oh. Yeah. So, why doesn't the employer just do it themselves? I mean, I guess that's why would there be a need for somebody to do this for you?
Right. So, this job would really go in the human resources department. And as you know, the human resources departments have grown and have had to take on a lot more responsibilities than what they've had. And not only that, with COBRA, there's a lot of timelines that have to be abide by. So initial notice needs to go out within 90 days of them enrolling in benefits. A qualifying event notice needs to go out. If you have a TPA, so the employer has 30 days. And then if you have a TPA, then you get another 14 days. So you have a total of 44 days to get that qualifying event notice out. Once that notice is out, then that person has 60 days to elect. And then if they decide to elect, their initial payment, they have a 45-day grace period on the initial payment. Then every month after that, it's 30 days.
How do you keep track of all of this stuff?
You use software stuff.
Software. Yes.
Yeah,
software. The solution to everything.
Yeah. And so for an employer to go out and buy the software to do all this tracking could get really expensive for them. And not that, so it kind of relieves the HR, because what we do is we check in with the HR every month. Hey, do you have, any new hires? So we're going to help remind them. We're going to help keep them on track. And then we do all the tracking, all of those, days, and for payments and for elections and for letters.
So you even work with companies that have a full-fledged HR department.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's just one less thing for them to worry about. They can worry about the employees without having to worry about this additional government mandated headache.
Right. And trying to keep up on any language changes, because I've actually seen some class action lawsuits stating, the right language wasn't in the qualifying event notice. So now we're going to sue for damages.
Goodness. So what are the kinds of benefits? We touched on this earlier, but what are the kinds of benefits that fall under the COBRA umbrella? Is every benefit COBRA eligible?
No, not every benefit. So not life insurance or like a short-term disability, long-term disabilities. Those are not going to be subject to COBRA. It's going to be your health, your dental, your vision, some of your wellness plans, some of your employee assistance plans. As far as those plans, we got to look at, is that providing medical care or is it just a referral service? So if they're providing medical care, then it is going to be subject to COBRA. Flexible spending accounts are subject to COBRA, and also health reimbursement accounts are subject to COBRA.
Well, what does that look like? I mean, I have some idea. Talk about these flexible spending accounts and the reimbursement accounts. Talk a little bit about the difference there and how those are subject to COBRA. What does that mean? So flexible spending accounts. So it's a cafeteria plan that an employer sponsors, and it allows employees to pre-tax medical expenses. So at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of their plan year, they need to estimate what they're going to spend on medical expenses. Okay. And let's say, they have $500 in their account when they leave, whether it's voluntary or involuntary termination. As long as there's a positive balance in that flexible spending account, it is subject to COBRA. So you have to offer it. So what they can do is they can still continue to contribute, but it's on an after-tax basis. And the reason why someone would want to do that is because they want to extend the time that they can use the money. Because remember, your expenses have to be incurred within the plan year in order and before the termination date if you don't elect COBRA. So maybe they didn't have their expenses before their termination date. So now they want to get the $500. They can pay the 1 month and then go to the doctor, get glasses, whatever, and then submit those receipts and get that money from their flexible spending account. I see. Okay. So what's the right time for someone to engage with you?
So really an employer, we would engage with the employers. So the employers would hire us, and it would be on a monthly basis. So if they're doing COBRA on a spreadsheet, which I've seen, they want to contact me right away.
So there isn't any requirement that it happened at the beginning of a plan year, or, it's not like, we just finished open enrollment right at the end of the year. And so it doesn't matter there. I mean, if you have employees, if you have more than 20 employees, it sounds like, and you have any kind of health benefits, any kind of benefits that you offer like that, you need to be aware that there are COBRA, there are COBRA requirements for you.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And for most employers, that's going to start when they have 20 or more employees and they have a group health plan.
Okay.
So that's when it really starts for them.
Yeah. And so if somebody wanted to reach out and find out more about COBRA and how you could help them, what's the best way for that to happen?
Probably email, phone call. Our website is cobraallies.com, and all of our information is right on our website on how to reach us. And they can request a proposal through the website as well.
Yeah. And what's the biggest pitfall, I guess? What's the biggest challenge that you see when you start engaging with an employer?
Gosh, I have so many. I can think of two off the top of my head. The first one is a lot of employers don't realize that they're required to send the initial notice. And that's to active employees. Everyone thinks that COBRA only applies when they're terminated, but no, it actually starts. So usually what we'll do is we offer a service where we can just do a blanket initial notice, make sure they're in compliance, and we have and then they have all the backup showing that those initial notices were sent.
Okay. So is it too late? I mean, you just hit 20 employees. Now you better go to Yvonne and COBRA Allies and get those letters out. How does, when somebody just crosses that threshold, is there some specific thing?
So 20 employees. So remember, so it's 20 full-time employees, but part-time employees also count too. And it's going to be for the prior calendar year. So they have some time. So if they just hit 20, that's okay. They're going to have a year to, get their ducks in a row there. Get
their stuff together. Right. Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful to know, right? It's not like, boy, if I hit 20 employees last week, I've got to scramble. And so so basically within a year of doing that, right? It's by the time you hit January of the next year.
Right.
So that's helpful to know.
Yes. Another pitfall that I really see, and I just had this one, and it happens a lot, where I do take over a group. They come over to use our services, and they say, "Yeah, these people were on COBRA." Both COBRA participants that they had never paid any of their premium for a year. So the employer paid the premium and nobody was tracking it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I know. When I retired from Intel, I stayed in the COBRA there for a variety of reasons.
Right.
Yeah, I was paying the full
It's
freight.
The full amount. Yeah, right. It's the full amount.
So do most employees then continue with the COBRA coverage, or do they opt into the marketplace? What's your experience there?
My experience is most people do not elect it because they are having to pay 100%. And I think that's what a lot of employees or former employees didn't realize, how much that the employers do pick up of the premium, because that's just the health insurance is just expensive.
It's very expensive.
Yeah. And people just don't realize that their employer either covered, 80% of it, and it's just too expensive. Most of the people that I see continuing it are people that are in between jobs. They know they're going to be starting a new job, let's say 2 months later. So they'll keep the COBRA just for the 2 months. And sometimes that new employer will help pay the premium of the COBRA just to get them, help their new employee along. I see a lot of people that are getting ready to go on Medicare. So they just need that coverage until they get on Medicare.
Yeah. So recent retirees, for example, who are, just shy of the magic 65.
Right. Right.
Okay. Great. Well, thanks so much. And that concludes our show for today. Thanks so much to my guest, Yvonne McCool of COBRA Allies. I hope you learned something about COBRA and COBRA administration. I know I did. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Profit Minds podcast. This is your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch. Please visit www.profitminds.net for other episodes or to contact me. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others. Thanks for listening. Have a grateful day.